Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, a free site, bettingangle.us, a free site. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Let's talk about the NBA. Let's talk about what's happening with Kawhi Leonard. Right, folks? It's major. It can change a lot of things. Just quick background. I believe that futures betting is the best way to bet. Understand, even after they beat the Chiefs, in some books, you could have gotten the Chargers at 25 to 1. A futures bettor only has to be right once. Right? So, I believe very few teams can win basketball conferences. You have OKC's first round pick, Thomas Sorber, who is out for the year with a torn ACL. That opens the door for Houston. It opens the door for the Clippers. Understand the Clipper offseason. They picked up Brook Lopez. They picked up John Collins. They picked up Chris Paul. They picked up Bradley Beal. Folks, with this kind of depth, even though the Clippers are one of the older teams in the league, this depth should offset the age. So the Clippers are in play to win the NBA Western Conference. Right? Well, understand this Kawhi Leonard situation popped up out of nowhere, folks. This could be extremely bad news just off the optics, even if the Clippers did nothing wrong. Let's go through it. The allegation is that in a salary cap league, Kawhi Leonard was able to bag $28 million extra dollars by having a no-show, no-do-anything endorsement deal with a Clipper sponsor, a group called Aspiration, right, in which Steve Ballmer, the Clipper owner, happened to be, depending on whose version of the story you believe, happened to be an investor. Right? It gets worse. Aspiration is no longer with us. They had to file for bankruptcy. Now we're hearing stories about possibly cooked books. Connections are everything in some business circles. Apparently, Aspiration had no-do-anything endorsement deals with some celebrities, where they paid the celebrities a bunch of money to endorse Aspiration. The celebrities then gave back a chunk of that money to Aspiration. Right? And Aspiration for services. Aspiration was providing, and Aspiration was then able to book the transaction as a big transaction. Not a I give you A, you give me back a little bit less than A. Right? No, they were able to put, the fact that they had a deal with a celebrity who was not publicly making statements about the business, and they were able to show that to investors and say, look, we have this big deal with this celebrity. Right? So understand what the league is investigating, and don't kid yourself. The NBA is run by guys with legal degrees. They have an outside law firm right now doing an investigation. Right? The league wants to know what role, if any, the Clippers played in Kawhi Leonard getting this $28 extra million. Right? Was this hey, you sign with us, wink, wink, endorse our sponsor, in which our owner has an investment, and you don't have to show up anywhere, you don't have to do a TV commercial, you'll just get the money if you come and play with us. Now let me point out the Clipper point of view here, and it's very important. Right? The Clippers are saying, no, you have it wrong. The rules allow us to introduce players to sponsors. Right? The Clipper perspective is, hey, sign our contract, become a Clipper. You sign the contract, then the Clippers say, hey, player, you know, this sponsor here of our team wants to meet you. You guys work out whatever deal you want. If you can work out a deal. We're not involved in that. Right? That's the Clipper perspective. The fact that Kawhi signed a deal that didn't require him to do anything for the $28 million, that's not the Clippers' concern. That's a private deal between an athlete and a sponsor. The fact that owner Steve Ballmer had an investment with the sponsor, well, understand that's commonplace in professional sports. Right? You know, these sponsors want to be deemed sponsors. If the team feels that the sponsor's doing good work, if the team feels that the sponsor is worthy of being a sponsor, then it's not uncommon for team owners to say, hey, let me get a piece of the action. Right? Let me be another investor, not a chief investor, not someone with managerial responsibility, not someone responsible for the books. But let me be an investor, because if this sponsor's making money, hell, it's a good investment. So the Clippers want you to believe that Steve Ballmer had nothing to do with whatever the arrangement was between Kawhi Leonard and Aspiration. Right? The fact that Aspiration didn't require Kawhi Leonard to do anything for the $28 million it paid him is bad management by Aspiration. That has nothing to do with the Clippers. The Clippers weren't in charge of decision making. Now, I'm not here to get pious. Right? I understand that, in business, everyone's looking for money for nothing. Right? But here's what I need for people to actually think about. Right? The appearance of impropriety. You have teams, I'm sure, who feel that the Clippers got away with one here. That there was a tacit understanding. You're our sponsor. You're going to help us get this guy. Right? He's dealing with you. If you want to stay our sponsor, you'll find a way to deal with him. Right? Now we're finding out, according to reports, who knows whether they're true, that in 2019, when Kawhi Leonard was negotiating with the Toronto Raptors, we're finding out that his representative, we'll call him Uncle Dennis, according to reports, asked the Raptors, who of course were bound by the league salary cap, to find a no-work endorsement that would pay Kawhi Leonard extra money for doing nothing. Right? Now understand, the team can't get involved with that. All the team can do is, in the normal course, introduce you to sponsors. That's all they can do. Right? With the Clippers, the fact that Ballmer was an investor of the sponsor makes things messy. Also, the fact that Kawhi Leonard's representative, if you believe the reports, was openly trying to solicit extra money from a no-work endorsement deal, right, is an awfully bad look for the league. If the league feels that Kawhi was complicit with his sponsor in trying to circumvent league rules. You could see the league possibly suspending Kawhi Leonard for a period of time, which could impact your futures bet. Because I'm sure you're thinking of Kawhi, James Harden, the guys on the Clippers right now who made the playoffs last year, playing alongside Lopez, Collins, Paul, and Beal. Right? If there's uncertainty, and understand, folks, it's September. The NBA season's not that far away. If there's uncertainty and there's investigation, that could lead to an overhang on the team. You could imagine post-game interviews where, they're questioning Kawhi's teammates. And rather than ask Chris Paul about his assists, rather than ask Brook Lopez about some key block, or Bradley Beal about some key three, or Collins about some key rebound, you can imagine a member of the press, the LA Times, folks, it's a media hotbed in LA, saying, hey, what are your thoughts on what's happening in the Kawhi Leonard investigation? Right? You can imagine, some facts dribbling out, some employee of Aspiration making a statement that really has no weight because the employee might not have decision-making responsibilities. But that ex-employee could be someone with a grudge, right? Because the firm did file for bankruptcy. You could imagine some employee getting quoted in the paper, as has already happened, saying, hey, we thought this deal, or I thought this deal, was a salary cap circumvention. Right? So, folks, this is going to hurt either way. Steve Ballmer, who, of course, comes to the NBA after a very successful business career, right? Steve Ballmer is obdurate in saying he's a victim. Right? The fact that this company had possibly juiced books, the fact that this company was engaged in sham transactions with endorsers who didn't have to do any work to get money from the company, shows that he was defrauded as an investor. The NBA is looking into the idea that possibly Ballmer was using the company as a shell to hide the extra money that Kawhi Leonard was receiving. You and I know that the owners have a lot of power in the NBA. You could imagine some owners upset that they were playing by the rules, operating within a budget, and now you have word out that Kawhi Leonard was getting $28 extra million, right, from some sponsor that's now bankrupt, in which a fellow team owner had an investment share. Right, folks, it's a bad look. You're a futures bettor. Just understand the risk has been magnified. Now, maybe they compensate you for the risk in the futures odds. Right? Maybe, Kawhi Leonard will say, look, I will sit out, the first month of the season and take whatever responsibility needs to be taken for my lapse in judgment in accepting a no-work endorsement deal from a sponsor of the Clippers in which the team owner had an investment interest. Right? Maybe you, the gambler, will think to yourself, well, if Kawhi takes off in October, November, but not March and April when the Clippers need him, maybe they'll still have a shot here. Right? Maybe they can still win the West. They're deep enough. right? Maybe they don't need him during that period of time. Worse yet, maybe the off time will actually help save his legs. So he'll be more energetic at the end of the year. Right? But just understand, folks, this is a major overhang that could have major repercussions. Right? If the outside law firm doing the investigation finds any correspondence, and understand, when you're dealing with business entities, you have, the people who know not to put things in writing, and then you have young people who don't know what not to put in writing. If they come across any correspondence where there's any mention of circumventing the salary cap, or where there's any mention of talking to any person with inherent authority with the basketball team, right, talking about the salary cap or encouraging the sponsor to hire Kawhi and to not have him have to do any work for the endorsement money, a lot could then hit the fan. Right? So, folks, the Clippers are one of the possible contenders for the conference title this year. And they're dealing with a nightmarish scenario on the eve of the season involving a star player who has had representatives in the past, according to reports, approach other teams looking for no-work endorsement deals. Right? Think it through, folks. This could get ugly. Let me also say, too, there's another possibility of an overhang. Let's say the league finds that Steve Ballmer did nothing wrong. Ballmer is just an entrepreneur who, owns some stock in a endorser who mismanaged itself. Right, folks? How is that going to play in other NBA arenas whenever Ballmer is present? Right? Ballmer is a known basketball fan, not just an owner. Right? Are fans going to start getting creative in jeering the Clippers? Right? What's going to happen to Kawhi Leonard? Is he suddenly going to be jeered by fans who think that he got money under the table, especially since for the $28 million we're discussing here, he didn't have to do anything for it. Right? Keep your eyes on this story. It's bigger than it looks. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.